Here we are. All right.
Okay. Well, good morning.
Good morning.
Today is 23 May, the year 2010. I'm Dr. Dave Thompson, a volunteer at the Palm Springs Air Museum here in Palm Springs, California. As part of the Veterans History Project of the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C., we conduct interviews of veterans and civilians who participated in our country's military conflicts, especially World War II. Today, I'm here at the museum, and we have the honor and the privilege of interviewing storekeeper Clarice Dubinsky.
Yes.
Storekeeper Dubinsky was a stenographer in the Coast Guard during World War II. So we're going to talk to her about that and a lot of other things. So good to have you here, Clarice.
Thank you.
Okay, now first of all, I'm going to get you lined up here. Okay. Okay, Clarice, first of all, would you again repeat your full name and spell it for us, please?
Yes. Clarice Fuqua Wooten Dubinsky. And
Dubinsky, how do you spell that?
D as in day, U-B-I-N-S-K-Y.
Okay, and your middle name was?
Fuqua, F-U-Q-U-A-Y.
Okay, and that other name, is that
That was my first, when I entered the service.
That was your maiden name?
That was my married name.
Okay, what was your maiden name then?
Fuqua.
Oh, Fuqua. Okay,
Uh-huh.
all right. Okay, so it was okay, all right. And your father, what was his name?
Dr. George Louis Fuqua, and he was in War I and went to France, and he has a commendation from President Wilson for duties, his duties in France.
Do you have a copy of that?
It's in his trunk someplace, and I
okay.
think my first cousin has that.
Oh, all right. Well,
I
if you
would
ever-
like to get it from him.
If you did, we'd like to have a copy because I don't know if I told you, we're going to transcribe this into print form. We also have that where people can check out your story
Sure.
and read it.
Oh,
and
good.
And your
Okay.
pictures, and that's what will be part of that.
Yes.
And that would be something nice to have in there too.
Okay.
And where did he go to medical school?
To the University of Virginia
Okay.
and medical school, and he actually graduated as a surgeon, had surgical treatment in
Training and
training, of
yeah.
course,
Uh-huh.
and actually there were no hospitals or major roads close to our hometown, which was Coates, North Carolina. He practiced medicine there for years and years. This was during the Depression era, and it was rather traumatic, extremely traumatic, because during the Depression the doctors didn't get, he did bring home chickens and hams and veggies, so we ate properly.
Yeah, the barter system, yeah.
The barter system, yes, sir.
Absolutely. Now, did he talk much about when he was over in France in World War I?
He did not. I know he spoke of, he had a frozen foot, so he always limped a little bit. He was not a well man. He died at the age of 41 of cancer. And he was in a veterans hospital, I think in Dunn, North Carolina, I believe. I'm not positive, or Benson. Anyway, it was a veterans hospital, and he was there for quite a long time.
But when he was over in France, was he in a hospital setting or was he out in the field with the guys?
He was out in the field. Uh-huh. And as I said, he was a physician, so he could help quite a bit.
And his ancestors, where did they all come from, and how did they end up in wherever they ended up?
My grandmother came from Scotland. And my grandfather came from France.
I thought so. It sounded like it. Fuqua.
And that's about the extent of my knowledge of actually You know, I have pictures, drawings and pictures of my grandmother, grandfather, and the children,
Yeah.
and but I do not have them with me.
Okay. Well, if you get them sometime,
most-
that'd be something nice to put in
Uh-huh.
there too. And so your grandfather, he came from France, the Fuquay?
Yes, he was Fuquay. Folkia, it was a relative of Bonaparte.
Oh, okay.
I have a picture that was taken from the governor's palace in where was it? Some other
In France?
Bonaparte. Anyway, a friend gave it to me because I had mentioned that.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, I have that picture.
Was it taken in France or on one of those islands? When he was...
It was taken from the museum of another. It'll come to me, but I'm trying to think.
That's okay.
I can't breathe and think at the same time.
Yeah, we'll catch up on that later.
Okay.
So when he came to France, your grandfather, what did he do and where did he come? I mean, when he came to the
was a
United
farmer.
States. He came to North Carolina?
Came to Fuquay Springs. It was named after my grandfather, and he was a farmer.
That was in North Carolina?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
In Fuquay Springs, North Carolina, which is now Fuquay Varina, and it's close to Raleigh,
Oh, okay.
the capital.
Yeah. And you say your grandmother came from Scotland, though?
Yes, and I know very little about, practically nothing
Okay.
about that, except that he did meet her in Scotland and married her.
Okay. And your mother, what was her name and her maiden name?
Evelyn Ola Townsend.
Okay. And how did your mom and dad meet?
She was nursing at the Oglethorpe Sanatorium in Georgia, and he was practicing there. He was interning there, and that was
Was that before or after World War I that they met?
that was it must have been. Let me think. I'm vague on a great many things. 88. If I remember my name, I think I'm lucky. Very fortunate.
Yeah. So yeah. By the way, what your birth date? When were you born?
It's November the 2nd, 1921.
1921.
Uh-huh.
So it's probably after he got back from the service
It
when they
was,
got married.
yes.
I imagine that you were
Because
born.
I think that was
Okay.
very close. Shortly, must have been.
Yeah. And did she grow up in Georgia? Where did she grow up?
I have no, in the Oglethorpe, in the mountains.
But it was in Georgia.
It was somewhere in Georgia.
Okay.
I really know very little about
about
my mother, or my grandmother, grandfather on her side. I know nothing whatsoever.
Oh, really? Yeah, okay.
And my father, he was such a. We always addressed him as sir. Yes, sir. No, sir. And sir. And he didn't speak very clearly. At least my ears didn't hear it properly. And I would say, sir, all the time. Did he say, sir? But most everyone addressed him. Even though he drank alcohol, he was addicted to various and sundry medications. Most are illegal at this time. And his health was quite
Not
bad.
good, yeah.
Quite bad.
So now you were born. Where were you born?
Raton, New Mexico.
And so how was it that you were born in New Mexico?
Well, I had a brother older and a sister older than I, and they were born in North Carolina. And why we went to New Mexico, or why Dad and Mom went up there, I have no idea.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, he was a surgeon at the mining camps. I remember that.
Oh, okay.
And I remember it distinctly because my mother said Daddy was babysitting one day, and we lived high off the mountain. and I was trying to crawl off the porch, and we had a great, beautiful dog at that time, Collie, and he held me back with the diaper, took the diaper and kept me, oh dear, and kept me from, and Dad, Mom said that dog ate steak after steak after steak. Oh,
and so how many brothers and sisters did you have?
I had 2 sisters and 2 brothers.
And what were their names?
George Louis Fuqua Jr. He was deceased in War II. He was overseas. He was in the Air Force. And I was in the service at that time in Seattle, and I had a notice from the government that he was deceased, and so I asked for a transfer to Virginia, where my mother was. She was nursing in a nursing home at that time, and she needed a place to live from North Carolina to Virginia, so I did find a place to live there.
Well, was he shot down in a plane, or do you know how it happened?
He was in the air. I don't really remember the details.
Yeah.
I think, I don't know.
Yeah.
Frankly.
Yeah. What was his name? Your brother?
George Louis Fuqua Jr.
Oh, okay, Jr. Okay. And then the other kids, their names?
I had pictures of him in airport with drawing maps, etc. in school.
Oh, yeah.
Uh-huh.
And the other, your brother and sisters, what were their names?
Ruth, my oldest sister, was she died when she was 16. She was murdered.
Oh,
And at any rate, that's.
In the house, or was she out somewhere?
No, she was with a friend. The friend was also murdered. They had been to a movie together, and the friend was married, and her husband apparently thought that they weren't behaving themselves, and so he picked up an axe and he killed them. And that was so long ago. But that was quite a tragedy.
Oh,
my mother drank quite a lot. She was considered alcoholic, even though she went back to nursing after I became an adult.
Yeah.
And at any rate, I don't know what I can add to that.
And your other sister, what's her name?
Betty, she died. She had cancer, breast cancer, and she died 5 years ago.
Okay.
And
let's see, another brother?
And my other brother, the best I know, he was in the Army and spent most of his time in Germany. And he married, I believe, a German girl and brought her over. And he committed suicide.
Oh.
He was in the Army for quite a long time, many years.
Yeah.
Made a career of it.
What was his name?
Thomas Benton Fuqua.
Okay.
Thomas Benton.
Like Thomas Hart Benton?
Thomas Benton Fuqua.
Okay. Golly, that's terrible that you
Well,
lost all your siblings.
And we hadn't been in contact very closely.
Yeah.
For many years.
Well, when you were kids, did you do a lot of things together? And I mean, were you pretty close as a family?
Well,
How?
Actually, we were. What would you call it? We were put in different homes. My uncle was a physician, and I lived with him part of the time. And another uncle was Dr. Young, and Anger was a physician. I lived with them part of the time. And as I grew older, I lived in various homes.
Was that because of money problems in those days?
Our home burned down, and I was with my aunt in Chapel Hill, North Carolina at that time, and she told me about it. The house burned, and so Mom and Dad didn't have a place to stay, and Mom went to went back to work, and Dad, he was quite ill at that time. He was in the hospital for a long time.
Okay, so he could.
I have the write-up on that, all that.
Yeah.
And as I was going to, I don't know what to tell you and what not to tell you, really, because it's
Well,
quite tragic.
Yeah, I don't think
dramatic, and
no, we don't need
nobody, everybody has trauma,
Sure. Yeah,
and
that's
so
fine.
you
No,
know,
we don't need it.
it's just
Well,
the
tell
past.
me about the good things that you remember when you were a kid. What did you do for fun and stuff like that?
Well, actually, I didn't have any fun. You know, the major thing that I remember, I went to church every Sunday. That was my entire week, was church and learning to memorize whatever. But the Baptist church in Coates, North Carolina, was my baptismal church.
Do you remember who the pastor was when you went there?
We had various ones that it was more or less a stand-up if you want to talk type of pastor.
Yeah.
It wasn't a biblical authority. But at any rate, I was a very religious girl, and I do remember one incident that happened. I'll never forget it. This was after my sister was murdered, and we were having quite a lot of problems, you know.
How old were you? When she was killed?
I think I was probably 12, 11 or 12. And I was outside the yard, and suddenly I felt all the joy in the world, just absolute happiness and contentment for just a second, but I never forgot it. And I think probably that was the biblical part of my life coming to fore. My mindset, you know. I'm not a terribly religious person, but I'm certainly a Christian. I believe in the Bible. And
do you have a church that you go to now?
no, I haven't. My husband was an agnostic. He was a physician in Berkeley, California. And he didn't, I took the two children to church a couple of times, but they cried so hard I left and didn't go back. And of course he was not interested in that. He's more of a scientific-minded person. And he didn't, well, at any rate, that's for that.
Yeah. Where did you go to grammar school?
In Coates, North Carolina.
Okay.
And then the business in Wilmington Business School.
Did you go to high school there in Coates also?
Yes.
Okay. How did you like high school?
Well, it was. I was living in different homes, and my main momentum was playing. I'd have to get the bus to go to my new home or wherever I happened to be living, and train of thought. It's awful to be losing, non-compass mentis.
So, but when you went to high school, you were living in different places and have to take the bus back and forth
and
to
I
school?
wanted to play basketball and baseball and join the group, but I couldn't because I'd have to catch a bus and be home at a certain time. They were very strict.
Yeah.
I was a pretty little thing, probably horrible to live with, but you know how that goes with teenagers. I was a teenager.
Did you have any special boyfriends in high school?
No. Only one. Only one boyfriend.
Do you remember his name?
No.
Okay.
Well, yes, I do, but not really.
Okay.
You know.
Yeah. Did you have any favorite? Did you have like business classes in high school, or what class did you like the best?
I liked typing and bookkeeping and things of that nature. My first husband, his brother owned an oil company, and I kept books for the oil company.
And so, did you have any favorite teachers in high school that you remember?
No. I liked them all.
Yeah.
But
So what year did you graduate from high school then?
it was in 19. God, well, I was 18.
Probably
When I
around
graduated.
40, 41, maybe 1941.
It was prior to the war
Yes.
in 41.
Yeah. And so then you went to business school, did you say?
Yes.
And where was that?
That was in Wilmington, North Carolina.
Mhm.
And I had a private teacher for shorthand.
Yeah.
It didn't have all the beauty that we have now. It's easy, but the shorthand is no longer even required.
Really?
So,
Did they say anything about you writing upside down when you went
Well,
to take
the only-
shorthand, things like that?
The teacher who taught me shorthand, I of course wrote shorthand upside down, and I did a beautiful. She thought it was just excellent.
Yeah.
Of course, when I transcribed it, however, it was right side up. So I'd sit there and transcribe, write it, and I was working in the 5th Army, Letterman General Hospital at that time. That's how I met my husband. And he was in the Army at that time. He hadn't been discharged. And
But when you were at Letterman, was that before or after the war? When you met your husband, did you meet your husband before?
while working at Letterman General, I worked at headquarters, 5th Army headquarters.
And that was in 1941. You were
No,
working?
that was after the
After
war.
the war, okay.
During the war.
During
I
the
did fingerprinting, interviewing, and personnel work.
And this was before you went into the Coast Guard?
No, no. This was much later.
Okay.
The Coast Guard was first, right
Ah.
after the war, 41, and I went in at 43.
Okay, let me ask you this. Do you remember what you were doing December 7th, 1941?
Absolutely. I was driving a little Chevrolet, and I drove up to one of my husband's stations, and they were putting gas in the car, and I turned on the little radio and heard what had happened. And my thoughts were, how dare they? How could that? It can't be true. It just can't be true, you know. And
Yeah.
but we had a radio at that time at the home, and we'd listen. So that was my married home, the Wooten home in Kinston.
Oh, okay.
Uh-huh.
So your first husband, what was his name?
Dal Wooten Jr. or James Elton actually, but everybody called him Dal Jr. So
And where did you meet him?
at where did I meet? I cannot recall.
This was it while you were going to?
I was living with his sister-in-law, and I think that's how I met him.
Is this while you were going to business school?
No, this is prior.
Oh, when you were still in high school?
I was living with an old lady, taking partial care of her, and going to school.
Going to high school? You were still in high school then when you
Yes.
met him? Oh, okay.
So this really unravels, and it isn't terribly interesting
Okay.
actually. But
Okay.
I met Dal. He was shorter than I. Everyone referred to us as Jigs and
Jigs and Maggie.
and Maggie. He was a cute little thing. Anyway, when I met Bob, I divorced Dal Wooten
Yeah.
and married my husband.
Okay, but and so what did Dal do? What kind of did he?
He worked for his brother, who owned the oil trucks and service stations.
And did you guys have any children?
No.
Okay.
Uh-uh.
So then you went to business school, and so, and then you went into. How did you get into the Coast Guard?
Well, I worked for Western Union, this time in Norfolk, Virginia, and I think it was Norfolk, pretty sure, or Portsmouth, Virginia, one or the other. And a recruiter came in, and I was very unhappy with my position at Western Union because I was assigned a call at that time when a soldier was killed. I would have to report it to the family. And later they changed all that. I think well, of course they sent,
Right.
Western
Oh,
Unions
so
and
you
all
would
that
have to be
stuff.
the one to.
But I I just couldn't do it. And so I was happy to go into the Coast Guard. That was a major reason that I was happy when she came and talked to me. And I said, well, fine. I talked with my husband and it was okay.
Now this, by husband, you talking about your first or your second husband?
My first.
Your first husband.
He
okay.
worked in Wilmington at the shipyard.
He did. Okay.
Everybody went to the shipyards or some kind of work,
Yeah. Okay.
So,
So where did you first go when you went into the Coast Guard? Where
I beg your pardon?
Where was your first duty station when you went into the Coast Guard? Did you go to?
Palm Beach, Florida,
Oh.
and for training,
Yeah.
and then to Seattle, Washington, and then back to Virginia when my mother became ill. My brother died, so.
But when you were training, did you march and do all that stuff?
Oh yes, boot training they called us, little booties. And
Was it
we stayed
all?
at the at a big hotel in Palm Beach, Florida.
And the base, was it all Coast Guard, or
It
was
was all Coast Guard, and they measured us, put us in uniform, and taught us various, the history.
Yes.
And it was interesting. It was a lot of fun.
And what's the motto?
Semper Paratus, always ready.
Always prepared. Yes. You were ready for anything.
Oh
huh?
yes, yes.
Okay, so and so from there you went to, where'd you say, Seattle? Was you?
Seattle, Washington.
And what were
and
you?
I worked at the headquarters there, and I worked in the chief pay clerk's office.
So they were guys you were working for and taking.
Yeah, yes.
Okay.
There were a number of guys that were working there. There were many offices there,
Mhm.
and I would direct people if they wanted thus and so where, and we had Russians coming in quite a lot. This is the first building in Seattle, down on First Street.
Mhm.
We had quite a few Russians coming in, and they would want directions to various offices.
Oh.
And my boyfriend and I, or a friend, a Coast Guardsman, and I went down to and we saw all the ships, Russian ships. Curiosity got the better of us, so we went aboard one of them, peeked in the window, and pretty soon an officer came and said, "You cannot, no, off." So we took off. But that was kind of a fun. I mean, it shows you what nuts kids. I was really
Yeah.
a little bit fruity, I suppose.
I want to show, like, how many uniforms would you have?
Two.
Uh-huh.
And
I want to show this one here.
Oh,
That's the one where you are saluting, learning to salute,
Uh-huh.
right?
right. I was supposed to show the proper way to salute.
Yeah. And that waist, what was that waistline
That
around
was
those?
a 19-incher,
A
I believe.
19-inch waistline. Wow.
Isn't that something?
Not many of those
Honest to
around.
goodness, many moons have passed and many shapes have come and gone.
Did you make any good friends while you were in the Coast Guard?
I had a number of friends. One friend who was my boss there, chief pay clerk, and when he retired, he was a commander, a lieutenant commander. But anyway, while I worked for him, I fell in love with him, or I thought, and I was married, so we became close friends. And when I left Seattle, though, I learned that he was stationed someplace else other than Seattle. I think Alaska and up in the Aleutians. He transferred up there. And, but you know, I married Bob, and he was in love. I thought no, he wasn't in love with me. My boss, Hoover was his name. He loved me, but I married Bob, and he disappeared. Hoover disappeared for years and years and years, and later my kids were growing up. He came back and found me where I lived, and he was one of the causes of my husband and myself having quite a bit of difficulty. At any rate, that's enough of that.
Yeah. Now, you said that they sent you up to Ketchikan, Alaska for a little while. What tell me about that?
Well, it was Richard was up there. He was stationed up there at that time, and I think he directed the plane or the boat. I went by boat and came back by plane, I believe. And he paid for that, or assumed the responsibility of that.
And that was because they were thinking about sending the girls up there to Ketchikan. Did you?
Well, yes, and I think finally they did send a number of stenographers, secretaries, and so forth up there.
And you were going up there to see if.
Well, I went up there. Richard was there, and I went up primarily to see him, but also somewhat, I don't know, I was supposed to interview and have pictures taken for the Coast Guard. And that,
Yeah,
therefore.
and matter of fact, don't we have a couple pictures here? Let's take a look at those. So there's a
Yes.
Coast Guard man with snowshoes he's got there, it looks like. Yeah. Yeah. And then this one here, too. Was it cold up there when you went, or what time?
Yeah, I wore my overcoat and rain cap most of the time.
And then, how did you find out about your brother being, that was in the Air Force, that was killed?
My mother, she was in, she was nursing a home nurse type of thing. And she called and told me. And then I received a telegram from the government, and I was working for Western Union at that time, I believe.
Okay, and so you went back to North Carolina then?
Well,
with your mom?
yeah, I transferred my mother from North Carolina to Virginia. I found a home for her there.
Oh.
I was in the Coast Guard at that time.
Yeah.
And I was out looking for places to live, and it was hard to find a place at that particular time, you know.
Yeah.
It was a rough time.
Yeah.
But I did find a place, and my sister, whose husband was in the Navy, he was a riveter, or did underwater riveting repairs for ships.
Yeah.
He did underwater work. And she became pregnant, so Mama, my brother, and I lived all together. It was nice. First time we'd gotten to know each other, really. You know? So.
And where were you working then, or what?
I was in
Virginia?
I was in Portsmouth, Virginia.
Still-
And Richard came to Portsmouth when her baby was born, to see the baby, and this is so many years, like, my gosh, from 43 until 66 when my husband died. Richard was followed from state to state, and when we were my mother wanted to go to Seattle. She had a sister there. To Norfolk, to San Francisco, of course. She had a sister living there. So she said, well, my sister's husband was coming home, and she's pregnant. So Mama thought it would be a great idea to go to San Francisco and visit her sister. And that my brother, mother, and I went to San Francisco, found a place to live, and the sister turned out to be not quite sisterly, and you know how these of it. Anyway, those are years and years and years have gone by.
But your second husband, Bob, was it? He was a MD, was a doctor?
Yes, and he was at Herrick Memorial Hospital in Berkeley, and
Is that where you met him?
I
First?
met him at Letterman General
That's what I
Hospital.
thought. Yeah.
He was still in the service then,
Yeah.
but he went into training at University of California Hospital, so we lived close by there, and he finished his training and went to Herrick Memorial. Was with the group there.
In San Francisco?
And, he was an anesthesiologist,
Oh.
MD,
Yeah.
anesthesiologist.
And did you work? But when did you get out of the Coast Guard?
In 1946.
Uh-huh.
At that time, I was in Portsmouth, Virginia, and the guys were being released, and I worked. That was my job, was typing up their
I see.
papers.
Yeah. Okay. And then after you got out, were you working at Letterman? Is that when you met hospital, or what did you do when you first got out of the
When we
Coast?
went to San Francisco, I went to the Presidio of San Francisco
okay.
and was personnel, and had a job there. And I in personnel, I did the fingerprinting and writing up histories and jobs, etc. You know, those kind of things.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed that. And then I went to headquarters, and I worked in chemical warfare, and went to headquarters and worked. And I became pregnant. I was married then to Bob, my physician husband.
Yeah.
And I became pregnant and was very, very ill. I had to go to the hospital. I'd vomit. Retention. I couldn't even retain water. And so finally, anyway, I didn't work after that. I was quite ill. So we moved to Orinda, California. And that's where we lived, and had my little baby in Berkeley at Herrick. And that was about it.
How many children did you?
Two
And what are their names?
sons, Gregory Robert Johnson and Robert Trent Johnson. And if I'd had a girl, it would have been Roberta. I can assure you.
And what do they do?
Well, my son, Gregory, I do not know what he does. He lives up in Rabbit Valley, Lake Isabella area. He bought a home up there. And I don't know what he is doing now. And my other son works for Target.
Where does he live?
Where
does he live?
Right in Palm Springs.
Oh, you're here in Palm Springs.
He lives with me now.
Oh, I see.
And helps take care of me, fortunately. I really appreciate that kid, I'll tell you. And he's in 57. He's no longer a kid, but I treat him as though he'll always be a kid to me.
Any grandchildren?
Yes, I'm a great-grandmother, actually.
Really? Well, how many grandchildren do you have?
I have one grandchild and one great-grandchild.
Oh, okay. And
But I don't see them or contact them.
Okay.
You know.
Yeah. And then Bob, he died?
He died in 1966.
Oh,
He was only 51. He had the heart.
Mm.
He knew all the time. For years after we were married, he said, "You'll be a young widow." He said, "So I'm not going to." His dad died at 49. Same thing.
Yeah.
And he knew, he was well aware that he had a bad heart.
And how old were
condition.
how old were the boys when your dad?
Well, Greg was 17 and Bob was 13.
Was that hard on them?
Well, actually, Bob and I had been separated, and he had a big, beautiful big home with a pool, and we were living in a little apartment. And at any rate, there was a period when they were not close.
No, I see. Yeah. Okay. So then after that, what did you do? after Bob
Well,
passed away?
tell you the truth, I went to work. I had to go to work. So I worked, I was in North Carolina, and I was living in a large trailer. It was a 24, a pretty good sized trailer. So I hooked my car up to the trailer and went from Bridgeton, North Carolina to Palm Springs, California. And I went into, I took care of an elderly gentleman, lived in the home, took care of him
Mm-hmm.
for quite a number of years.
Yeah.
And, you know, he died. He also had cancer, honest to God.
Yeah.
Like a black widow. So, at any rate, that's for that.
So you came to Palm Springs specifically for this job, or did you know anybody here, or why did you come
Well,
to?
my son was in San Francisco at that time. He was working at the airport,
Yeah.
and so I knew I knew he was in San Francisco. So I pulled my trailer, my little dog, and we had a little gun, well, all the way from Bridgeton, North Carolina to San Francisco.
To San Francisco.
Uh-huh. And then, you know, there's so many things that are not really interesting.
Okay.
I'm married again.
Oh, okay.
He was part Cherokee. He was Cherokee Indian, and he wanted my beautiful hair all the time. So in order not to give it to him, I left him. Oh, God.
Oh, my gosh.
Oh, dear.
Were you living in San Francisco when you were married to him?
No, I was in
Yeah.
I was in Orinda, California.
Okay. All right.
Hmm. And I was hospitalized at that time. Had a problem with emotional problem,
Mm-hmm.
and he was a patient there.
Oh.
So therefore, wherefore?
So when you so what year did you come to Palm Springs then?
Let me see. It was 19. I'd been. Gee, when was that? My sister lived right across the street from me. That's why I was in Bridgeton, North Carolina. So I was part of the time lived at her home, and part of the time in the trailer. And then I realized that, you know, I was working for a big hotel at that time, and I realized that was not going to go anywhere. I was living and working at the hotel. There's a big one here, used to be. Oh, God, I'll tell you in a minute. It'll come to me. Anyway.
Well, did you get transferred out to the hotel here in Palm Springs? Is that why you came out here?
No, I came out here because I pulled my trailer, my little dog and I, all the way.
Yeah.
And I'd never pulled a trailer before. And when we went up to the gas stations, let me tell you that the guys would push on that trailer. I didn't know how to park the thing or anything else, you know. I'd never driven one before.
Yeah.
And the guys would get on the side, this way, and they'd push. So then I finally, in parking, I would park where there were trucks in between so that I was safe. I felt safe there. And I went to bed early and I'd get up early. And so at any rate, that was pulling the trailer. And I made it.
Yeah.
Made it all the way to Palm Springs.
You ended up
And
in
then
Palm
looking in the paper. Oh, I worked for another hotel as clerk. I'm trying to think of the name of the hotel in New Bern where I worked as a desk clerk. It's big. They're big. And then in Palm Springs, I worked at another hotel as desk clerk.
I see. Uh-huh.
And after that, I was reading the paper and I saw an ad that an elderly gentleman needed someone to help care for him.
Mm-hmm.
I applied and I got the job, so, and
So you did that for quite a while, and when he passed,
I took care of him for 3 years, and
3
then
years.
he had cancer and he died.
yeah.
So I went to the funeral and everything. I was right with the family. Vangel was his, Vangel, Nick Vangel. He was well known back east. He was a restaurateur,
Oh.
and he owned restaurants back east. So he was, anyway, he had 2 sons and a daughter, and I was friendly with them, so I went along with the funeral and etc., you know, just socially.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then what did you do after that?
Oh, gosh. The thoughts elude me completely. Oh, in living in Palm Springs, my husband, who became my husband, I became friends with his sister and her husband. So, through them, I met my husband, Dubinsky.
Oh, okay. We
Went back
finally got
east,
to.
went back east and lived in Connecticut and had the Russians, and I tell you, they love music, they love dancing, we partied. It was great. I was up there for 18 years.
Well, what was his name?
William P.
Dubinsky.
Dubinsky, and his parents came from Russia. And I have a Russian birth certificate on him, but I think they were in this country when he was born. I'm not sure.
Was he in World War II too?
Yes,
Oh.
he was also. He worked for a big company there, making airplane parts,
Mhm.
repairing.
Where was that? Back east?
No, that was in Connecticut,
In Connecticut.
Hartford.
Hartford.
Let's see, he worked, what was the name? Gee, of all these years, and I've remembered every little bit, but now it eludes
Yeah,
me.
right.
I suppose I'm overfeeding this thing. Oh, God.
And did he pass away? Is he still alive or?
No, he had Alzheimer's,
Oh.
and that's why I came to Palm Springs. From Connecticut, because I could see he was becoming ill, so I sold my home there and came to Palm Springs, and his sister and husband helped me with finding a place to live,
Okay.
and so I took care of him. He had Alzheimer's for about 5 years. I took care of him for 4, but he was a big man, and I just couldn't, I couldn't do it anymore because he was completely out of it. He couldn't see, couldn't hear, didn't know who he was or anything at all. He was pretty bad shape. So he died, and anyway, I had him cremated and sent back to Connecticut. His family came,
Yeah.
and I had him cremated, and they took him back and buried him with his first wife, the mother of his son.
I see. Now now you met him in Palm Springs originally, did you say? Where did
Yes, I was working, actually, and Peter Kress, who was well known in Palm Springs,
Kress
he
and
did
Kress,
a lot
yeah.
of jobs, and
Mhm.
his sister was the sister of my husband.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. And your
His wife was the sister of my husband, and I met him through them.
I see. What kind of work did he do? What was he doing then?
He was he dealt with various parts of the engine that required very technical stuff
Mm-hmm.
for the planes,
Oh, okay.
and it'll come to me and I'll say, why couldn't I remember that? Scoville Manufacturing Company in Connecticut,
I see.
and they were transferred to Georgia, Atlanta, Georgia, transferred. The Scoville Manufacturing went to Georgia, and Bill didn't want to leave Connecticut, so he he retired at the age of 55. He retired, so he didn't get much Social Security, you know. But he didn't go back to work. He said, I worked for 40 years, that's it, no more. And I didn't blame him. He didn't have to work,
Yeah.
you know.
But it
So-
sounds like you had a pretty good life back in Connecticut.
Oh,
when
it was
you were
great.
there.
We had a nice home, beautifully furnished, nice. Everything was nice.
Yeah.
Relatives, and Bill's son is a professor at the University of Texas in Houston.
Mhm.
And so we, you know, he was happy to come back to Palm Springs, to come to Palm Springs. And he had to, because I just couldn't,
Yeah.
I could see he was becoming very ill.
Yeah. And what do you do to keep yourself occupied these days?
That's a good question. I wish I could say that I did something, but I keep house, do my shopping, watch television, listen to the news, which isn't always encouraging, but, you know,
Where is your house? Where's your home?
it's in a Mobile Home Park.
Yeah.
It's right off of Golf Club Road.
Yeah.
It's Palm Springs View Estates.
Okay.
It's known as.
Golf Club and
It's off Golf Club Road.
Yeah.
It's off
111.
111.
Oh yeah, I know
And
about where
it's
that
a big
is.
turn there on Golf Club
Yeah,
Road.
pretty close
And
to
then-
the
yeah.
golf course there. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a very nice, a large park, very
Mhm.
large.
Yeah.
So we're there now with my son living with me.
Does he work at the Target right there?
Yes.
Yeah, well, that's good. You probably
He-
walk there if you
That's
went to.
great.
Yeah,
Really
that's great. That's
great.
a nice store.
I
like that store.
I drive, but I drove today because he had to work and I had to
Oh.
have the car.
Yeah.
I drive, but I don't really enjoy it. I'm a little apprehensive about it
Yeah.
because my eyesight isn't what it should be. My ears aren't what it should. Well, I'm not what it should be, but I am.
Well, for
Period.
88, I think you're doing pretty darn good.
Well, I don't know. It seems such a long time.
Yeah.
I mean, so many things happen that I don't know where I am, who I am, or what I am. Let's put it that way. I just am. Oh dear.
Well,
I've had an interesting, not interesting, but certainly a busy life.
eventful, that's for sure. You've
Yes.
been through a lot and seen a lot and
Yes.
had good times and bad times, and
Yeah.
I guess pretty much everybody does to a certain extent, but you
Yes.
even more so, I think.
Well,
Clarice, I want to thank you for your service to our country, and
Well,
thanks for coming in and sharing with us
thank
today.
you
It was really
for
great.
listening to me, and probably you're my psychiatrist of the day. It's a happier day.
A happy day.